Good morning, Perth. My name's Sean Kelly. I'm your host for the World Football Programme on Radio Fremantle, 107.9 FM. In the studio today with me is no one. Unfortunately, Pete's been taken down by the dreaded lurgy. I've gone to the reserves bench and they're all injured or not able to perform. So we're down to 10 men and it's it. And I'm here on my own, so bear with me. Thanks to our sponsors for putting us on air. As always, these are the people to thank or blame for putting me behind the microphone. Perth Glory, Australian Mini Football Federation, Dataplatz, Rachel Pepper Illustrations, Gate and Fence Hardware WA, Oswest Fencing and Wrought Iron, Melville City Football Club, and our latest signing, as we mentioned last week, which was Prosperity Real Estate. So thank you to all those guys for putting us on air. Frank and Jerry with the Songs for Ireland radio programme on before us. Thanks, Frank and Jerry. Always a very good show with those guys in the studio. Big news this week, been a bit. Arsenal come and conquered. Their new signing, Lazarete, scored on his debut for the club, so it looks like a good signing for them. Sydney didn't do too badly, but unfortunately it looks like Ryan Grant's out now for a bit of a time as he's done his ACL, which is not good. Local girl Sam Kerr is lighting up the States in the American leagues there. She's been the player of the month for the last couple of months, and she's just broken the all-time goal-scoring record. And that girl's just gone from being class to world class, in my opinion, and she's just getting better and better. Looking good for the Australian game against Brazil, which is coming up shortly, and I'm sure Penny will be following that game avidly. What else has been going on? Chris Hurd has just signed for Western Sydney Wanderers, local boy, the Bassendean boy, the only one they're proud of these days. And he's going to sign with West Sydney. Obviously, we missed out on Danny De Silva. Two of the best young prospects that this state has had in the last few years, and both had an association with the Glory. Could have returned home, but they've chosen an Eastern States-based option. I don't know what that says about the club or Kenny or what's going on there, but, you know, I'd like to have seen them two back in the Purple of Glory and doing their business from out of this state rather than seeing them pull on Eastern States-based shirts. But, you know, I thought that's the way we were going, and obviously we're not. Another little bit of news that came across at the weekend, or during the week, was an abomination attack on our game, a full frontal attack by the AFL, a thing called AFLX. I don't know who thought this up or what they were on at the time, but basically 7-a-side AFL on a football pitch, using our goal line with the outside post on the 18-yard line as a reward for missing. And it just looks horrible. Even the AFL punters on radio and TV are smashing this one, but it's ugly. It's a bit like a cat and a dog getting married and going on honeymoon. It's not pretty. No one should be having to see that, and I think it's the sooner that dies, the better. But a full frontal attack on the game, you know, pinching our parks now. So anyone who's got an opinion on it, please get behind it and get it out of the game. I don't think the AFL want it. I don't want it. I'm sure we don't want it. On today's programme, we have a trifecta of presidents from the First Division coming on air. We will have Bill Busby from Ashfield. We've got Maurice Auteri coming in from Fremantle. He'll talk about some of the State League Standing Committee and Zone Reps elections that have been on, and plus some changes at Fremantle. And Paul Oliver from Canning. Paul's taken over this year as the president of Canning, and he's doing a good job there. Unfortunately, the team on the park is just not getting the results. I've seen them play a couple of times, and I don't know why they're not, because Peter Lord's got a very good team out there, and they're just a bit unlucky. Not for lack of effort from them lads anyway. And I've also got Jake Shorter from the Eastern States, who is a stats man, and he does something called ELO calculations. And for all the nerdies out there, and it's a shame Pete isn't here because he could have had a real geek fest on this one. But basically he does the Australian club rankings, and that is, he rates every single club from the A-League down to the second division, and rates all these clubs in order on results and other things. So we'll go through that, and we'll talk to young Jake about what he does there. So an interesting show in the offing. Other football news, I think there's been a couple of statesides announced. The under-16 stateside going to Singapore. That looks very good. Most of those boys are from the NPL, so NPL sides, and I know there's a couple of teams in there. Melville got a young lad playing, but most of them are Premier League NPL sides, so good to see them going. And the under-19 national side's also been announced, and that looks like that's going quite well as well. So we'll be back after these messages with Bill Busby, talking about what's going on there at Ashfield, and see how they're tracking this year on and off the park. So we'll be back after these.
The World Football Program welcomes the Australian Mini Football Federation onto Radio Fremantle. Join the growing numbers playing non-traditional forms of football at any of the Area 5 centres around Perth. Find out more on osminifootball.com. Station sponsor.
Oswest Fencing and Wrought Iron. Our family fabricates fence panels, gates and framework. Repairs gates and sets up automated systems. Ring us on 9258 6822 for old-fashioned family service and advice. Station sponsor.
Are you considering data and software development? From a simple website to custom office automation software. Phone Andy at Dataplatz on 0414 263 938. That's 0414 263 938. Station sponsor.
Gate Fence Hardware WA are your local business, supplying materials, components and parts for fencing and gates. Practical and simple how-to advice by our family. Products shipped anywhere. Visit our online store at gateandfencehardware.com.au. Station sponsor.
At Prosperity Strata Management, we exclusively manage strata properties. With 30 years of management experience behind us, our excellent customer service is second to none, and we believe well-kept properties are the key to generating good sales and rental returns. On-site visits to your investment are conducted on a regular basis, with our aim being to see your property improve. For further details, visit our website at prosperitystratamanagement.com.au or call 0499 994 923. Prosperity Strata Management, station sponsor.
Okay, seems like Billy's just dropped off on the air there for a moment. I'll have to try and get him back. There's a couple of good things happening out there at Ashfield, so we'll talk about those in a moment. NPL results from last week. Stirling Lions versus Perth Glory. Stirling won that one 2-0. ECU Joondalup playing Cockburn City. ECU ran that one out as 3-0 winners. Bayswater versus Balcatta with the home team. Bayswater winning 2-0. Perth with a massive result over Sorrento 5-0 and keeping up their goal-scoring record. Inglewood United away to Joondalup last week and gave them a good sound thrashing 7-0. Floreat Athena played Subiaco with Subiaco having a win there. And the last game of the weekend was Armidale versus Mandurah, with that one playing out to a 1-1 draw. So after that, the table reads Inglewood on top at 42 points and a massive 34 goal difference. Floreat Athena with 39, Perth with 38, Sorrento 35, Bayswater with 35, and then a bit of a gap towards Joondalup with 39. So it's fairly 29. It's fairly tight there at the top of the table, with only about 7 points separating fifth from seventh. So only a few games to go in that league, but still anyone's table there. At the bottom end, we've got Joondalup on 29. At 7th, ECU Joondalup on 28 points. Cockburn City in 8th spot, 27. Armidale sitting at 9th, 24. John O'Reilly will be happy with where they're sitting at the moment. 10th, Stirling Lions on 22. 11th position is Subiaco on 22. Balcatta at 12th with 14 points. Perth Glory in 13th position with 13 points, and taking up the bottom is Mandurah City with 13 points. And I think all those bottom sides meet themselves in the last couple of rounds. So that would be a very interesting finish to a season there in the NPL for both ends of the table for different reasons. And the NPL this year at 14 teams is obviously a very different competition than what it's been. And then with the NPL review, we don't know what's going to happen at the end of the season. That's not been announced yet, but I don't think it's going to be far away. All right, I'm going to give Bill another call on the telephone, and we'll be back after these messages.
The team behind footballwa.net can boast the best independent local football website and football forums in WA. These are sites devoted entirely to promoting the local game and our history. Visit footballwa.net for the World Football Program guest lineup every Friday. Radio Fremantle, recognising volunteers who support football in the local community.
Perth Glory early bird memberships are now on sale for the 2017-18 Hyundai A-League season. If you're an existing reserve seat Perth Glory member, now is your best time to renew and enjoy discounted pricing and extra special member benefits. Early bird ends July 20th, so be there for the glory as together we look to create destiny. Membership.perthglory.com.au.
And the Perth Glory obviously sitting there in a good position. So in the NPL a little bit differently, and they're playing today at Ashfield. And on the line I have Ashfield President Bill Busby. Bill, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Sean. How are you going?
Good, mate. Glory there today. Is the crowd starting to build up? I suppose we're still only, 45 minutes away from the 18s kicking off, so you've just been that.
I'll be leaving for then about 5 minutes. My good Vice President, Brendan Cowling's there getting everything organised, and then I'll just walk in and look good.
Now, ground sharing's been pushed as a way forward for clubs from a perspective of a club that's got plenty of experience at doing that. There are some pitfalls to the process. I mean, the relationship with Glory is good, and other things are going well, but things like the pitch management and just the time it takes for the volunteers.
Oh, from that point of view, it's hellish, but I mean, it allows us to be more sustainable. And I think at the end of the day, we're actually helping clubs out, which I think you're given something, and if you can share it with others, it's like being a good neighbour. And I see that we're all for football, we're all for the football family, and we've done it firstly to help other people out, and then secondly, there's a benefit to us. Not a big financial benefit, but it certainly helps pay the bill. So it's a bit like having more people in your house paying rent. I think if you've got if you were flatting and you've got 2 or 3 people, you help them out to get accommodation, and then they're doing the exact same. So we're happy with the relationships we've had with core tenants, if you like, and the town of Bassendean has been exceptionally good with helping this sort of thing, and it does stretch the volunteers, because like myself and others that do the volunteering, we can't watch the away games, which is a bit difficult.
Yeah, and that's, I suppose, the whole point of it. You've got volunteers who join your club to be supporters and follow the club, and then, you know, they can't do that, so you miss on your away crowd, which hasn't come in. But I suppose, look, for me, you look at the things like the pitch management. Last year, the pitch took a hammering and wasn't holding up. How's it holding up this year?
It's holding up pretty good, considering last year we probably had a real wild winter, and it seemed to rain every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So with games being played on every week, 3 teams every Saturday, and 2 teams most Sundays, and it was really getting cut up. But to the town's credit, about this time last year, I think they replaced about 1,700 square metres of pitch sort of thing, and it was on the front of the early in the week. And they may be doing some more remediation next week or the week after to the goal area. So
no, it's good to hear.
Touch wood.
Now, I suppose the other thing is for a Bassendean local, if you're or Bayswater, which is close by, there's a game there every week, no matter what. So, you know, if you don't want to drive all over Perth following one team, you can at least come down to Ashfield every Saturday and watch some quality football being played.
Yeah, we do get a bit of that because of Morley Windmills, which is also in our district sort of thing, depending on who they're playing and what the interest is, and the same with with a good crowd for Perth Italia sort of thing. I mean, some teams are better followed than others, and we get the benefit of that. With the bar sales, kitchen sales, and even coffee sales, which is a new industry as far as we're concerned.
Yeah, and today's game is a real 6-pointer because you've got Mandurah and coming up to play Perth, and this one really is going to make a huge difference to both clubs if they lose it. So there should be a good crowd, I'd hope.
Yeah, well, we'd hope there's a good crowd because there's everything to play for, and I would like both teams to win because they're good affiliation with both of them, because I don't want Mandurah to lose and I don't want Glory to go down either. So it's just an interesting scenario today, and good luck to both teams. So for once I'll be totally impartial.
It's one of those games where it's good to be the neutral, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Two nice bunches of people. So.
Oh, absolutely. And when you look at it, there's a number of teams throughout the history of Ashfield that have been through. There was the Ashfield-Bunbury sharing deal where they actually shared the same position. That they actually played in the Premier League. We've also had a partnership with Forestfield previously, and they've come back to thank us by flogging us recently. So
we didn't turn up that night. So.
No. Now going on to the team and your coach this year, you've appointed a very young coach in Matt Wardle, who's only just finished his playing career with Ashfield. Dad was a coach previously for Ashfield. How do you rate young Matt?
Matt's doing a great job. I mean, I like listening to his talk, if I have anything in there for half time and how he says it sort of thing, and I think he's doing a great job when he analyses how the guys play, and not everyone's a fan of the three at the back sometimes that he plays, but I don't interfere in team selection or how they're going. I'll obviously have personal points of view sort of thing, but I've never interfered in 10 years with any selection process, and know what I would going forward. But I think we're doing well in the three teams with Matty Wardle, Madden, and the under-18s coach, all doing good jobs, because as a club we want to be successful in all the leagues. But I think the good thing coming through that actually has always enjoyed is our first team coaches have always allowed under-18s into reserves and reserves into first team, and that continues today. It's really, really good to see.
Yeah, it's interesting because on the bench the last few weeks, you've had the under-18s goalkeeper on the bench for the first team, so there must be some trust and some faith in the young man. But
he's a very good goalkeeper. He's only had a little bit of opportunity to watch him play, and last week had a good opportunity, and I think he's a fantastic player, and he's going to do well for us, sort of thing. And we're very lucky as well that Brad Effie returned to the club, which is really nice to see.
Yeah, and the good thing about young Brad is he also brings the rest of the family with him, as in his mum and his dad and his wife and kids. So, that's the crowd doubles every time we play a home game now.
Yes, it's good when they get the family. I mean, that's also what we'd like to see, is more of the kids and more of the family staying back and watching it. And that applies as well to the Glory today, because they tend to, and it's not a criticism, it's just reality, that they're under-18s and reserves will play, and they don't stay behind to watch all the games. Whereas I know when I was at Athena, Mickey Brennan when I was coaching, Mickey Brennan would be there for the 18s game reserves, and he would also maintain the 18s and the reserves to stay and watch everybody. So that to me is the way a club should be running. So, yeah. Yeah,
and I think last week, we were tested for our depth a bit. We had 6 18s playing up in the reserves, and about half a dozen of the reserve team playing for or on the bench for the first team. So that side of it is really good to see that progression. And some of those young lads, I think the average age of our reserve team is somewhere around about 23, 24. We don't have too many of the older heads in there, but we've got enough to make a difference.
Oh, yeah, and I think the good thing is, once again, I listened to Madden talk, and he's another good analysis of the game, and does some really good stuff at half-time and full-time, looking at the boys, and also admits when he's made mistakes on issues, and puts his hand up. So he leads by example, and I think with Maddie and Madden, they're doing a fantastic job with those two teams.
Well, Madden's another former player who's only just finished his career, and his offsider Ashley Picker also played for us. So it's really good to see those young fellas coming back and getting involved in the club. And, it's not just there because we've also got a fitness coach who's come back after his playing career was cut short. So it's nice to see them involved. And Mark Humphreys is still involved in that
very good
coaching quarter and very good with the youth players. So good to see that we've engendered some continuity within the playing group and to keep those people involved in the Ashfield family.
I think we've done well over the last years, particularly from the early days with Taffy and John Castrilli helping us out when we're struggling with we finished in the bottom or near bottom sort of thing to where we are now, that we consistently look at being a top four proposition, and even with the comings and goings of players, we still seem to survive at a good level, and with good coaches and good facilities. I think we've established ourselves now as one of the more productive soccer teams. With quite a lot of our players have gone through and played in the NPL now, sort of thing, and that's a real credit to us. And I noticed on Facebook last week that a team from 5 years ago, 18, 19 players that were all class players. So we've done well in over the 10 years, and I think all credit to the coaches and players and guys like yourself and other volunteers that have contributed, done the hard yards. So no, we're going well.
Now, going on to the volunteers, you had a bit of a change through, but you've been drawing in a lot of the old Ashfield faithful to the back room. Obviously, Brendan, who's stopped his job as a part-time.
Started as under 7 at Ashfield.
Yes, did start as an under 7 at Ashfield, and he's had a break because he's been an unpaid taxi driver for his girls for the last couple of years. But he's now back. He's lost his Uber license, and he's back in the fold.
Yes.
So it's good to have him back on board. But also there's other people that have got themselves back and involved in the back room. And obviously with the game every weekend, really important that you have a good solid base of volunteers coming in.
Oh, it's brilliant. I mean, Chris and the other Chris that does the kitchen, they're in there from virtually 10 o'clock till 6 o'clock sort of thing. And Linda and does the gate with help with Sue Carling. So I mean, those four just takes so much weight off the rest of us that we can get other things done. And Brendan and Craig they're down there at 9 o'clock this morning to make sure everything's right for the referees, who can be fastidious, but that's the way it is.
Now, also off-field, about a year ago, or maybe a little bit more, there was talks of the home of football being at Ashfield, and everything was moving along at a rapid pace. Then we had a state election and everything just ceased. Is there any more on that?
Nothing. I mean, I went to the Perth Glory end of season function and spoke to Mick Murray, the Minister for Sport, and we don't see it dead and buried. It's dead for the moment till the government gets the money. But I think we're the last major codes. And I see in the West Business, page 91 this morning, State Football Centre, Socrates playing golf, so hopefully...
But we're still on the list behind the home for Trampolini and the home for Tiddlywinks and the home for Canasta.
We can only but hope. But the thing is, I think, unfortunately, the town of Bassendean councillors and the mayor, who are all behind it, is an absolute flogging from some of the people who are anti-sport and anti-development. But
I think you'll find no matter where you go, there's a fair amount of NIMBYs who don't want anything in their backyard. But when we build the new international airport in Bunbury, we'll all be complaining they had to drive an hour to get to the airport. So, there's no winners, is there ever?
No, I think at the end of the day, Football West, with its new James Curtis and the board, whatever they may be, will be productive and chase it through. But how long it takes, we'll wait and see.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you catch during the week this AFL-X that's getting pushed a little bit or not?
You mean the AFL doing whatever they do?
Well, I think this one's an absolute direct attack on our code. They're basically going to put 7 players on a soccer pitch, and have this abomination happen. I think even the AFL media pundits are against it. But truly, when you look at it, it's ugly.
Oh, what is that, 7-a-side? I've not seen that.
Yeah, I know. I don't think we'll see it for much longer. I think it's one of these ones that's going to just fade away and die. I've just been joined in the studio by Maurice O'Teary. Maurice is the president of Fremantle City. Good morning, Morris. How are you?
Good morning, Sean. I'm well, thank you.
So I've got the two presidents on the air at the moment, which is always a good thing. And Morris has represented the State League Standing Committee for the last
2 years now.
2 years,
I've just been reappointed again for the next two as well.
Yeah. Anything you want to say about the Standing Committee, Billy?
No, I think we're lucky that we've got a representative on the Standing Committee who does a good job for us and listens and liaises with us, sort of thing. So I think more of it. I mean, on a personal level, I'd like to see a bit more commitment from the chiefs of football to get presidents' meetings once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year, whatever they may be, for several reasons. For fellowship and getting together and common goods and common needs.
Are you reading my notes?
Well,
that's part of my conversation with Morris that's coming up next.
the more you meet with each other and small things like where you do things and how you do things. I mean, we had somebody, a young under 18, wanting to join us from a club that's struggling with under 18s, and my first thing was, oh yeah, that's interesting. But then I said, would we be taking a good player from a bad club who really should be staying to see the club survive at the under 18 level? I mean. It's fine to look after yourself, but I think sometimes you've got to look a little bit beyond it and say, in particular this under-18 boy, well, why would you leave the club? The fact that they're not going well isn't a reason to leave. It might be a bit selfish, but if we've got 15 or 18 under-18s, which we have,
yeah, then you're doing one of your own.
Why would we need 20 or 21? Let that club survive, or if need
be, let
some of our spare players go and play for them. So
and there's a lesson there in commitment as well, Billy, that once you've made that commitment to a club, you should see it out.
Yeah, 5 or 10 years would be good. So,
I think you've got to look at that on a case-by-case basis, because we've had exactly that situation occur this week with an under-18s player coming from another club, and we're not, in the market to, recruit under-18 players. But when the player himself is stating that there's only 4 people turning up for training, and it's just a demoralising environment for them, that how much further can they go when no one else is committed, whereas he is.
Yeah.
So I think it's just on a case by case.
It's not cut and dried, is it? No.
But if there was commitment between the clubs, because if we were close by and say it was Morley Windmills or Bayswater, and if we've got 20 or 30 under 18s, not that we have, we know we've got 18. Could you not speak to each other and say, look, if you've got excess players, can you ask some of them, and maybe the committees could meet with the players of both clubs and say, look, we've got collectively.
It's exactly what we did last year, Billy. It's exactly what we did last year with Shamrock, when we were cutting down 50 trialists for our 18s.
Yes.
Those that weren't successful were given the numbers to contact for Shamrock. And I know because Shamrock did and continued to struggle to get an 18 side out. But, you can only take a horse to water, you can't make them drink.
Oh, yeah, it was interesting, as you all know, because I guess about 9 years ago, I can name him NASA because he did it. He was under 18s coach, and they walked away with the whole team, took him to Morley Windmills, not Windmills' fault, his fault, and then slagged the club a little bit, and they didn't do the right thing by football. But fast forward, the Wanneroo president at the time was critical of us not having under 18 side, and I said, look, from time to time, clubs still have these little issues.
Oh, look, that one, Billy, there was a lot of timing issues there. That was at the end of the night series, which was probably a week or two before the start of the season, when the whole team walked at the coach's direction. Yeah, don't go backwards when he told them, and some of them haven't played since.
And why not? Because it was the coach. Was he a good fella? Not in my opinion, but there's not too many people I put in that category. I think there's two. No. I won't name the other one.
No, that's not. He knows who he is. All right, Billy, look, things sound to be going really well down there. I know you and the fellas will be working hard behind the bar and the canteen and making sure that the Glory game this afternoon is a success. As a neutral, I just hope football's the winner. And it's a real 6-pointer down there, so I think it could be a very interesting game. And if you're a neutral and you've got nothing better to be doing than standing out in the sheltered stand at Ashfield, watching a good game of football, then head yourself down there for 3 o'clock and watch these two sides go at it.
Exactly. Agree with all that. Thanks, Sean.
No worries. Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Billy.
Bill.
See you, mate. Bye.
Bye.
Bill Busby, the president of Ashfield Sports Club, and just some interesting things about the home of football, which I know, Morris, you got some thoughts about, and the death of that since the election. You know, the sport has been kind of overlooked, and we've got the Centre of Excellence for netball, basketball. Aussie Rules have got 2. It's
no priority, no money, but plenty of excuses constantly.
Yeah, and when you look at it as a participation sport, we're up there.
Yeah, it's the story of our life in this game, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We're not going to change it anytime soon until one of the, football-loving politicians gets into power and forces it through like who was it in Victoria, Jeff Kennett at the time, when cut through all the red tape, you know, all the developments went through, all the stadiums came through, all the sport events came through, and it needs that type of leaders that's not going to take, you know, any rubbish and say it needs to be done.
Absolutely. Now, Fremantle, you're sitting there in 8th, which for a team promoted is pretty good. In my opinion, anyway, and I've seen you play. You're a good side, and yet your coach Steve Plunkett's pulled the pin.
He has. It certainly came out of left field for me when he called me on Tuesday night, because he was under a 3-year agreement with the club. But I guess it's testament to the sort of character that he is, that if he felt that, in his own words, that he didn't feel as if he could turn the team around, he got the most of the players that he had there, then it happens to the best of them. I mean, I think I liken it akin to a first-team player who comes up to the coach and says, Coach, you know, I'm not feeling 100% today, so I don't think I'm going to give you 100% effort. I think you should leave me out. You know, you just don't get first-team players doing that.
Yeah.
You know, they almost get... they wait to get caught out to say, hang on a second, you've been on the park for 15 minutes and you play like crap, you know.
Or they're saying, boss, I'm 35, the legs are starting to go, I just haven't got the heart in it anymore. Give one of the young kids a run.
Yeah, but Steve's always been like that. He's been very consultative. He's been quite transparent. He's been open, you know, in his dealings. And I think any other person who had less of a character, you know, could have waited until we had 3 games to play and, you know, in a relegation dogfight, and then decide that, well, you know, I certainly was never going to push him.
No.
And never had any overtures of any of that nature. I'm a very loyal, committed person, and I understand where the club sits. And the only goal this year really is just to stay in the league, and if we do any better than stay in the league, well, then it's a bonus, and then we work, you know, up from there. There's some really good teams in our league, you know. We can name off, you know, we're playing Western Knights today, our home ground. You know, obviously Dianella, Rockingham, and Forestfield. I mean, there's and Nashville's coming up as well.
But even when you go to the bottom end, there's some very good sides there. You know, I'll talk to Paul Oliver later.
Yes.
But I've watched Canning play. And Canning are a good side. They play good football. They've just been very, very unlucky.
Yeah, I know.
UWA play tremendous football, and they shouldn't be where they are.
Yes,
Southwest Phoenix, when you look at them, they shouldn't be where they are. But, you know, and they're not playing bad football. And I think all of that comes down to the threat of relegation has improved the strength of that league no end. And then when you look at where those teams, particularly Knights and Dianella, ended at with the FFA Cup. You've got Knights obviously playing Sorrento.
The State Cup next Saturday.
Saturday, and then in the FFA Cup on the 26th of July.
In Gold Coast?
Knights go to Gold Coast, and Glory go to Heidelberg.
Yes.
Well,
we got a glimpse, didn't we, last week with going back to Div 1 for a moment with Gosnells beating Rockingham. So, you know, that wasn't on the scorecards.
It wasn't
in the books. So everyone's capable of beating everyone in that league. Yeah,
it's a very, very strong league, which is, you know, a good thing, but it's a bad thing as well, because you've got some good sides that are going to end up playing for relegation.
Yeah.
And, for mine, and I look at it, it's a 12-team league. We've got a team sitting in 12th.
11 now.
No, which is bye.
The bye.
The bye should automatically be relegated, and then the 11th spot plays off. I know, but for mine, and I'm just looking at it from a legal perspective.
Go on then.
No, but the team in 11th should have the playoff, and then the team in 10th should be safe. But that's not going to be the case this year, is it?
No, it's not. The whole playoff structure's changed also for Division 2.
Yeah.
So previously, where it was only the automatic promotional spot for Division 2, and then the second place team would play off against the second last team in Division 1. That's been expanded so that in Division 2, it's the teams that finish second, third and fourth that will be involved in a two-legged playoff with the second last team in Division 1. So we're going to have second last team in Division 1 playing against fourth in Division 2, two-legged playoff semi-final, second and third in Division 2, two-legged
I like the concept. I just dislike the 10th place having to do some of that.
You can't really go to bye because even with the NPL review that's on and hasn't been released completely as yet, then the structure we see this year for Div 1 and Div 2 is going to be the same as next year. So I think it would be unfair for a team that wins the Division 2 championship has then got to go into a playoff situation.
Oh no, I think they should go up. They should fill in the bye.
And then you're left with 10 teams.
Yep. Yeah.
Left with teams.
I know. But we're left with 2 byes at the moment, which is ugly anyway. So there's never a perfect answer for any of it, Morris, but that's the way it's going to be, but it's just a shame.
We just work what we got, like we always do.
Oh, absolutely. When you look at it, you've got Canning, Joondalup and Gosnells and yourselves all in that area.
Correct.
And any other season, if you finish 10th, you'd be safe. And this year you could be in a playoff. So
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's...
with Gwellup or Morley.
I don't... if that's what happens, then that's what happens. It's you've got to deal with the cards you dealt with. So,
absolutely, yeah.
But we are optimistic that we won't be in that position.
Yeah.
We fielded a number of inquiries and calls for the replacement role, and Steve. We have conducted a number of interviews and we have made a decision, and I'll probably announce that more publicly tomorrow and let the day go through. But the new coach comes from a NPL pedigree for the last 3 years, and I'm very excited about the prospects now. 100%.
No, you got a great setup there, and you're going to attract good coaches, as you did with Steve, so that's going to continue. I think when I saw your team play the other week, defend extremely well, maybe lacking just a little bit of punch in the top end, but that wasn't for lack of effort. You were getting there. It's just finding out what's wrong.
Don't put your chances away.
That's right. You can't. Yeah, if you don't put them away, you can't win. But that's how it goes. And I've only seen you play the once this season, but I thought overall, good side.
Thank you.
Now, going back to my passion, and one of the things that's been annoying me for a while is the Standing League and State standing committees have been elected. The elections were held.
Yes.
I believe all of the people that were successful have been informed, and Football West were going to announce on the 30th of June that who they were and who the successful applicants were.
What, they haven't as yet?
Not yet. No, it's 2 weeks in and we're still waiting. Although I see last night or during the last week, they've posted up actually what the zones are. I'm a bit disappointed in the way it's done. It's very wordy about Tonkin Highway South and Tonkin South Highway Northeast to the Avon and Swan River for the zones, and it's a bit wordy. I think in this day and age, a map with little place mats on for what clubs there were in those areas wouldn't have been too hard to put up. But it's for mine. The zone reps are a massive tool for Football West and for the clubs to be utilising. I think they've been underutilised for the last few years.
Yep.
Lack of engagement is a massive problem. You probably find the same in the State League Standing Committee.
We've actually been quite lucky and proactive. Two steps, I guess. First of all, I wouldn't really call it an election when you do not have more candidates for roles that forces an election to occur to choose, between two parties. So effectively, anyone who nominated for all the standing committees and zone rep positions were automatically approved.
Okay.
I think there's only one election that's occurring or has occurred. I don't know what the result is.
Yes.
Down the southwest, where there's two candidates actually wanted to fill the one zone
Yeah.
role. I think that's the first time it's happened for a long, long time that there's been.
But if
two
you go through
volunteers.
the timeline on Football West, that would all have been organised and sorted by mid-June, and there was no reason for them not being able to say then. There's even less of a reason
Should
not to
have
say
been done.
these are the successful applicants.
Correct.
These are the vacant positions,
Yes.
and then call for nominations for those.
Well, the nominations were called at the end of May for a start.
Yeah,
So
but I'm
everyone-
talking about the ones that are now elected. We would have some vacancies.
There is.
All the state league standing
We've only
committee
got one
spots.
position out of the 10 available.
Okay,
So
that's good.
we've got 9 out of 10. I'm aware that with the women's, they've got 4 of 6 amateurs. I believe it's 4 of 6 as well. Juniors maybe similar. So it's just
Engagement.
yeah, we just don't have enough.
Yeah, because I mean, there's plenty of armchair warriors out there who'll sit there in front of their keyboard
Correct.
and bang off tomes about the lack of effectiveness of the state league standing committees, but none of them will put their hand up and actually attend and go to a meeting or
Yeah, so
yeah.
I think that the engagement with the state clubs from this standing committee's perspective has been, to a large extent, very good. And it does come down to, each member of that standing committee engaging with, presidents or other committee members and just getting as much feedback as we can. And even when we've thought twice about any recommendation, we've got a specific state president's Facebook page. It's a closed group that will put some feedback up, polls, surveys, and for those that want to see and have some input, they'll engage. And I can honestly say it's at least 70% of the state league clubs right now.
Yeah, I know.
At least
I
that,
think
at least that,
I think
yeah.
since you've come on board and a couple of other people that have really gone out there and put themselves around the
firing
place. Sorry,
Out in the firing line.
out in the firing line. Yeah, no, but you've got some good people on there.
Yes.
Paulie Mamomi, Campbell Ballantyne, Phil Kelly.
Absolutely.
So it's good to have some of that newer blood in there.
Yes.
I think since you've
Andy
come
Osborne as well.
Andy
that's,
Osborne, he's very proactive.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's good to have those people there, and I think from what I've seen, the State League Stand Committee is very effective. You get hampered by some of the things like the board can just vote down any recommendations you make, which I know you don't particularly enjoy. But I think the zone reps massively underrated. Very, very powerful when you look at how the Football West board is elected, and they are the conduit when you look at what their role is between Football West and the footballing community.
Well, there's 10 zone reps.
Yeah,
I don't believe that they are entirely clear as to what their role is, quite frankly. Okay, and when you're right, when you have say 2 zone reps in particular that come to mind that represent say 12 clubs, and I don't know, let's put 400 or 500 members per club there.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you've got anywhere between 5,000 and 6,000 players whose views on this game in this state and any vote that might be cast in the future, rests with 2 people. And 2 people representing the thoughts and desires of 6,000 is not democratic. It just doesn't make any sense. And the worst part was that at the recent vote that was cast regarding the change to the constitution, those 2 particular zone reps who represent the same 12 clubs, voted differently.
yeah.
So
But when you look at the areas, they're quite large in
they are
in geographic and in numbers, because they don't just represent State League or MPL. They represent MPL, State League, amateurs, juniors, and women.
correct, 100%.
So there could be, for a zone rep, 100 clubs or more.
No, the zone reps have now been broken down into.
Yeah.
Oh, you're saying 100 teams more, so rather than
Yeah,
clubs.
yeah.
So the zone rep might have 12 clubs, but those same 12 clubs are also then typically represented by a junior standing committee, women's standing committee, state league standing committee, and so forth. So
Yeah, I'm just looking at the southern region or even the eastern region. There'd be more than 12 clubs in those particular zones.
some zone reps have actually got a lot
Yeah.
larger group of clubs. Might have 30 clubs, as
Yeah.
an example. Yeah.
So then that expands your example out from 6,000 players to 18,000
Correct.
or 20,000.
Correct.
and they're casting the votes on behalf of those people, often without any input from those clubs.
I can tell you right now, there's little to no input that occurs.
And the zone reps have a terms of reference, which has been put out by Football West October 2016, and within that it says that they should be the conduit for the flow of information and issues of relevance from Football West to and from the clubs that they represent.
Well, I could say to you that you could call upon each zone rep and then ask them honestly and candidly how many clubs do they actually and have spoken with to receive that feedback from.
Yep. I know the answer already. Yeah, because I have done.
Yep.
And some of them don't even know
which clubs are in
their zone.
Correct.
And then the clubs, and this is for me the lack of communication from Football West, is the zone reps haven't been announced, so the clubs don't even know.
And it's not even the zone rep's fault.
No.
I mean, I want to be clear, it's not the zone rep's fault.
No.
Because, look, they're the first ones who've actually put up their hand to actually put themselves in that position. So once they've done that, then all the more reason why they then should be supported with the terms of reference, with some direction in terms of what they should be doing, and make their role as meaningful as possible for the time that they do have, which we have to keep reinforcing is one of a volunteering nature.
Now, I did see on Facebook that you had some ideas about how they should go about their business, and I thought it was an intriguing idea.
Sure.
And that was about using the Facebook media.
Like a voting system of some description.
Yeah.
That
very similar to your club president's page, I suppose. You could have an Eastern District Zone page where a person from the club would have interaction with their zone rep.
Correct. There has to be some mechanism for communication to occur between the zone reps and their clubs, or the standing committees and their clubs, so that we're all time poor, the best of times. I prefer to just to try and break down all this, this rumour, innuendo, this discontent, and make it more factually based. So I don't think you can do that unless you've actually got a forum to be able to communicate to.
Correct.
You can send a million emails to Football West, and they can refer it back on to the respective zone rep and standing committees. But make it a healthy, robust discussion from within a group. Now, that's not to encroach on some really good, Facebook groups right now, which is your WA State League and your WA Sunday Leagues and so forth. So you don't want to start cannibalising those terrific groups, but just specifically, more of an administrative basis, so that when the time comes for recommendations or any changes to be made, and votes need to be cast by these 16 members, well, let's just make these 16 members held to account by their representative members, their clubs, players, or otherwise. But I think at the first stage, clubs is probably the best place to start, because there's, I think, 236 of those.
Yep.
And then obviously each club, may have, a couple of teams, or might have 50 teams, or different playing groups across, as you mentioned, juniors, women's, amateurs, and so forth. And to my mind, I would say that if a club's got 4 playing groups, then they'll get 4 votes, and if they've only got 1 playing group, then they'll get 2, because by default they'll have a zone rep attached to it.
Yep.
And your worst case scenario is that if you've got a club that's got playing groups in every single standing committee jurisdiction, well, then they'll get 6 votes. But that's not to say that those clubs have any more additional power because of the 6 votes they may have according to the 2. It's just common sense that those clubs might have 600 members as opposed to the club that might only have 80 members, 100 members. So it's just all proportionate according to the number of members they hold.
Oh, absolutely. If you look at Ashfield, we've got a State League side with reserves and 18s. That's it.
Yep, so that forms part of State League.
Yep, absolutely. But then in comparison to someone like Melville that is represented in...
everywhere.
Juniors, women's, absolutely. And, 1,200 active members.
They'll have 6 votes easily.
Yeah.
And so they should.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it's a very good way of doing it. Does that require a constitutional change to put in place, or is that just a mechanism?
Not at all, and that's the beauty about it. So we don't have to get bogged down in any red tape. It's no different to if every single standing committee and zone rep put forward the resolution to Football West that we want to set up a voting system so that we can hold our votes to account, then the board can just approve that as a as a concept, and then try and go through the mechanism of how it can work, and obviously not be abused. So, I would like to think that every single club will then have, one nominated, authorised, person that can cast that vote, and so it doesn't get abused. And I just think that the concept and the mechanism of how it can work needs to be explored.
And very similar to the poll that Campbell, Ballantyne and Phil Kelly put together for promotion relegation, which gave great feedback. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Even the vote that was cast for the change in the Constitution, the AGM, was done through a survey, through a poll on the state president's page as well.
Yeah.
So, we were very clear in our mind that of the 22 clubs, 13 clubs of the 17 that did vote, voted in one particular way. But once we got the quorum beyond that 50%, then we knew how that vote had to be cast.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, the use of technology, as you said, we're time poor. Some of the districts are quite large. When you look at the Eastern District, goes up to the northern boundary is Swan River and Avon River, and down to the Mandurah Peel District. So, although, the hills and all that are in that area, there's quite a lot of clubs within that area, quite a diverse amount of clubs in that area. So geographically, for a zone rep to physically go to them would be very difficult. But the use of that media would be invaluable.
And look, I'm realistic. We know full well that's similar to a council election, which is not mandatory. You might have 30,000 ratepayers, and maybe 3,000 will turn up. To vote. But right now, I'd rather have 3,000 turn up to vote than the current situation, which is only 2.
Yes. Well, and the other thing is that's 3,000 people who are engaged and thinking about what the game is, as opposed to some people who just, whatever you put in front of me, that's what I'll do. So, if you don't have your vote, then you can't complain that those that did vote didn't have that conversation with you, because that's happened.
Correct. If you want to say, step up and have a say. Otherwise, just accept for whatever result might come out.
Absolutely. Now, talking of which, the NPL review. Any closer to that? Or we? Well,
from my understanding, there are 46 recommendations that have been assembled that will be put forward to the second half of the, it hasn't gone to the board as yet, but the 46 recommendations, look, I don't know what they are because I'm not part of that steering committee, but I've got a general idea of where the theme lies. But like all recommendations, there's a lot of them there, and it's going to fall down to 2 scenarios. It could be all the recommendations could be adopted, which I think will be highly unlikely. All the recommendations being rejected, which I think is also going to be highly unlikely, because I think that would raise more criticism than anything else. It's like, well, you've just gone through this whole process, and please don't tell me that at 46 recommendations the board could not see their way through to accepting one of them at least.
No, and given that you've sung the praises of the company that they're doing the review and their credentials, to then just say we're not doing any of it.
No.
Yeah, I think you're probably somewhere in the higher end of 35 to 46 would be.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think there's going to be some noses put out of joint with some of the recommendations that might be adopted that have been put forward. But I'd probably applaud those ones if they are put forward to break the current impasse that takes place with the way that the whole NPL is structured currently. So, I look at the Queensland model currently, where, as an example, they have, promotion and relegation based on not just the first team points, but that of the under 20s, under 18s, under 16s.
Yeah.
So collectively,
that's interesting.
It is interesting because it's like, well, all of a sudden now you can't just focus on your first team. You've got to focus on your under 16s and make sure that they're performing and they're, being as competitive as they can.
If you look at it within our state league at the moment, Western Knights top of the league for the senior team, with their 18s in the bottom. I think they are bottom, and their reserves are somewhere in the middle. So it would make a difference on their promotion relegation.
Well, I mean, it's not going to make much difference for Western Knights now because they've already been declared and deemed to be ineligible for
I know, I'm talking
promotion.
about the future.
But, you know,
Yeah.
I even have a view on that, but let's just see what happens at the end of the season.
Yep.
I was contacted recently from Football West, who've been very proactive to conduct audits around the
Yep.
different clubs to see how they shape up. I've already provided our clubs consent for our audit to be made publicly available in order to encourage all other clubs to do the same.
Yep.
And I've put Football West on notice that if you want to avoid a legal challenge at the end of the season, then if you make everything public as far as how all the clubs' audit has those results, then let's say hypothetically Western Knights win the league.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry guys, you can't go up. Well, hang on. Could you now share the other 14 clubs' audit results just to make sure that all the 14 NPL clubs were in fact fully compliant as well?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But if they don't do that, then I can just see subpoenas being issued and legal challenges, and you can't discriminate against them
No.
and give discretion to others and so
And I
forth.
think when you look at the NPL review in a whole, though, I mean, the NPL review is solely about the NPL, but there's going to be a whole lot of ripple effects from that, some of them very big.
Yes.
For example, and I don't know if it's a recommendation, I hope it's not, that if we go back to the 8 foundation clubs and everyone else is out.
Yes.
So then that would give you 6 teams that are now relegated from the NPL who suddenly go into the first division.
Yeah, I think
And we're
that's
not going to run a 17-team league.
Well, yeah, well, I know who would like to see that happen.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not going to happen.
But then effectively you could have 7, the last 7 of the first division reduced or relegated. So starting with Canning, Joondalup, Gosnells, Fremantle, UWA, Rockingham and Ashfield could all be relegated. And then, Ashfield will be in the playoff spot at the moment. And then the 2 coming up,
Yep.
is that a fair and equitable situation when you've got teams that are, well and truly safe because of what happened above? So the NPL is going to have a massive effect. I don't think it's going to stay at 14 teams.
Look, I advocated from the word go that this NPL name, this brand, this perception of what it is, has 2 elements to it. You have the element of criteria and facilities and meeting eligibility requirements, which I think that every single club should try and work towards if they truly want to become semi-professional in that sense. And then, secondly, if you want to stop this mass, exodus happening up and down from promotion relegation with players, wanting to play NPL, well, make it, as we do in the East Coast, NPL, NPL 1, NPL 2. Give all the clubs that actually meet the eligibility criteria and the league itself that brand.
Yeah.
Make them more NPL clubs, and then all of a sudden, well, hang on, in that case, there is no gap, between NPL and State League 1. Because, there's certainly a player difference marginally at times.
Yeah.
But that could be thrown out the window when you see Western Knights perform as well as they have to date. But yes, some of the arguments is, the NPL clubs saying that they've invested in their infrastructure, they've invested in their youth, they've invested in so many areas, and then
And you haven't, Morris.
Oh, of course not.
No.
We're just sitting there twiddling our thumbs, waiting to be...
To me, look, it's the most useless argument of all, There's teams in Division 3 amateurs that have invested time in money and in development and their future. So that's not a valid argument in my book.
I mean, an 8-team league would not be interesting. We're already struggling with a 10-team A league, and it's already gone a little bit stagnant in that sense.
Yeah.
So I think 12 is a good number, and go back to where we were, I guess, with the 3 leagues of 12, but, trying to give it a different
But if you look at it, the crowds in the first division are very healthy. When we went to Fremantle, it was a good 150 there, easy enough.
It wasn't too bad.
Well, but that would make some teams jealous in the NPL. I've been to a couple of games.
Why? Which NPL clubs are not getting at least 100 people to their games?
Ingles struggle.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that. I thought that
quite a few of them do.
Wow.
Yeah. Forestfield, when we played there, their stand was full.
Oh, that was awesome. Yeah. The Saturday night, I think there was about 400, 500 or 600 people down there. It was magic.
Yeah. And definitely that would make just about everyone in the NPL jealous. But I think the brand
use the word jealous. I don't like that word jealous, Sean. Inspired. I think everyone should be inspired.
But if you look at it from that perspective, I mean, the football on the park, Forestfield versus whoever, and that's because of the strength of that league. There's no, even though we've had some big results, there's nobody who couldn't beat anybody on the day.
Correct, 100%.
Forestfield have invested in a very good facility, which gives you some spectator comfort.
Yeah, $1 million bucks.
A great stand, great bar, great canteen, and the whole vibe there on the night is just great.
Yes.
And that's when you look at it for getting bottoms on seats. I'd much rather go to Forestfield on a Saturday night than to some of the NPL clubs on a Saturday afternoon, because I know I'm going to get a seat, I know I'm going to get covered accommodation, and it's just the whole vibe there is just really positive.
Watch one of the NPL games at the moment where the pitch is about 150 metres away from the club room. Something.
Yeah.
So everyone got a pair of binoculars. I am being sarcastic, of course, but you're right. It's like it's a standard that every single NPL and state league club should try and aspire to, and just keep working. It's not easy, but you've got to have that goal.
I can remember when I played at Kalamunda some 20 odd years ago, 30 years ago now. Sorry, but. We were under pressure then to improve our ground, which was a football ground that we shared. We used to have a fence around the pitch, things we just couldn't do.
Yeah.
And as a result, we folded. But we're still having clubs now at the highest level who are playing on much the same facility with no comeback. And I think, you've got a club that comes up from, say, like a pub team background who've got a nice little venue. It's just a park and a changing room. That's great. You're playing in the amateurs.
And that's their goal, and that's what they want. And
and if you're playing amateurs and Metropolitan League, fantastic.
Yes.
Perfect. But once you start to step up into the State League, I think there's some expectations that your pitch should be fenced off, even at Amateur Premier League, that the fence should be fenced off, that you should be able to provide some seating. We went through a ridiculous thing a few years ago where we've got 420 seats, and we were told that we couldn't be considered to host NPL games because we didn't have covered standing for 100 people.
Oh, wow.
So but we had over
420 seats.
Yeah, and the minimum seating requirement was 200. So you're saying I pull up 100 seats so people can stand, it was ridiculous. Some of those applications of the rules are not sensible, but spectator comfort and the spectator treatment is some of those things you've got to look at. You can't charge someone $10 for an NPL game to bring their own chair and sit behind a rope.
Yes, even with the seating that we will be implementing down at our own club, falls within our licence area, like most do anyway. But you want to have a bit more of an experience there with being able to both serve food and drink, while people are still basically sitting down, as opposed to, waiting for half time and getting out and about. So it's a journey. I think that everyone just looks at, as you've stated, make it comfortable, make it a pleasure to actually go down to a club facility and enjoy an afternoon. And
then when you go through the NPL 1, 2, 3, maybe NPL 3 being your feed-in league, you come up, your expectation is that you can have a roped-off ground and some plastic chairs, but to graduate from there to NPL 2, you're going to have a fence and you're going to have some proper seating. And then when you go to NPL 1, there is an expectation that you would have all the things that are expected of an NPL club not to the level of, say, a Perth or an Inglewood or Floreat, but somewhere close to, so that the spectator environment is there, that if you need to have media coverage, the media coverage is going to be of a stand with people sat down and all the things you want to see to promote the game in a positive light.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you've got, 10 points of an NPL criteria, that's applicable to the, first NPL league. And then, the NPL 1 could have, 8 of that 10 criteria, and NPL 2 could have 6 of the 10, so you can work it progressively. It only came to light for me recently, even with the potential playoff that may occur for this current promotion relegation season, in that your Division 1 team needs to play with the point system in their playoffs.
Yeah.
So instead of having, I think they got a 20-point bonus, instead of working with 200 points, they work for 220, which I think is quite interesting, in that you could have
Have you run the numbers?
Yeah, we have. We'll be fine, but
so will we.
But you know, we're sitting, you know, whatever, 5th and 8th,
Yeah.
you know, respectively. But I'm thinking that if you finished, let's say hypothetically, the team that wins it's not eligible, and then those that finish second may have got to that second place. But if they had to go and count back that 220-point system, may not have got there. So
I think they'll all make it. I think Forestfield will make it.
I think Forestfield will be
without
fine.
a doubt.
Yeah,
Forestfield will make it. I don't. Well, Dianella probably will.
But they're not eligible anyway.
No, but I'm saying Knights would. I was just going through just on purely on the points.
Yes.
Those teams. When people say, "Oh yeah, but you can play foreign players, you can play this, you can play that."
Yeah, that's only one extra visa player.
I know, but when you look at what's going on within those leagues, do the numbers.
Yes.
If you do the math, you'll find that we're actually on an even playing field.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't think there's anyone in our
much
league
difference.
that's playing, 11 imports that have never been in the league before.
Okay.
Dianella's got a lot of new players, but a lot of them came from the lower leagues. I think there's not a lot in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Oh, it's one less burden to think about then for those that are there.
Yeah, I think you'll find that they all come up reasonably well. Not too many people will struggle. Your midfielder you got from us, he might cost you a few points. He's 150, so. No, Ross Diamond's a good lad, so.
He hasn't been playing actually the last 3 weeks.
No, it's a shame actually because he's a good quality player, and again, it's about having someone that's had that experience, being able to share that.
100%.
And I think
balance it out,
but also that experience goes through your team, and we had a couple of players come to us with experience in the higher leagues, who when you watched them train, and even in their late 30s, brought with them a level of professionalism we didn't have within our club.
Yes.
And that's permeated and stayed.
Yes.
So, the more that happens, the better you become as a whole.
Well, that attitude, or that positive attitude, then forms the fabric of your own culture, so it keeps on
absolutely
embellishing that. Yeah. Good.
All right, Morris, thank you very much for your time. I know you're a busy man, and always appreciate what you do when you do come in on air, and
Thanks,
what
Sean.
you do with the standing committee. I believe you'll have to have a meeting and elect a new president for the State League Standing Committee.
That's already occurred, so I've been re-elected as chair.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's good.
Yeah.
I know you've got a good team around you. I know you continue to do the good work. And as much as people don't like controversy, I know that you pull people up in a very respectful manner. And I know you're quite vocal.
Firm and fair, that's what I like to think at times.
But I don't think you need to be a terrorist to achieve your results. Sometimes people think it's a shock approach. It's not.
Yeah.
You can do so respectfully, ask the right questions to the right people, and still continue that conversation with them without any animosity. So you're doing well, and the Standing League, State League Standing Committee are doing extremely well.
I'm very humbled by those words, Sean. Thank
No
you.
worries. Thank you, Morris, for being on. So that was Morris O'Teary from Fremantle. Always appreciate his time. All right, I'm going to go to the messages, and I will be back after this with Jake Shorter, who is responsible for the Aussie Club rankings. So we'll be back after these.
Join in the glory these school holidays with the state's biggest and best football clinics, the Perth Glory Soccer Schools. 5 locations: Subiaco, Ellenbrook, Melville, Sorrento and Bunbury. 2 big days of giveaways, tips and tricks and fun with Perth Glory players and coaches. Sign up on the community page and soccer schools at perthglory.com.au.
Do you know someone who has a great football story to tell? Do they need some encouragement to share it with our listeners? Would you like to know how some clubs reward their volunteers, or what the answer to reducing resources and increasing registrations is? As a community football program, we like to share and promote the challenges and successes, personalities, competitions and events that help our sport transition and grow. Send us a message via our World Football Program group Facebook page and we'll be in contact. This is all for the good of the game that we all love and cherish. Football!
The Perth Glory Football Club is proud to support WA football and the World Football Program. Stay tuned on 107.9 FM every Saturday from 10 a.m. for the very latest Perth Glory news. A-League, W-League and Youth, glory is ours. Station sponsor.
Rachel Pepper, illustration and design for print and web. Contact Rachel at rachelpepper.com. Station sponsor.
The World Football Program welcomes the Australian Mini Football Federation onto Radio Fremantle. Join the growing numbers playing non-traditional forms of football at any of the Area 5 centres around Perth. Find out more on osminifootball.com. Station sponsor.
Oswest Fencing and Wrought Iron. Our family fabricates fence panels, gates and framework. Repairs gates and sets up automated systems. Ring us on 9258 6822 for old-fashioned family service and advice. Station sponsor.
And I'd like to thank our sponsors on Radio Fremantle 107.9. Please, if you need any gate fencing or hardware, go down and see Penny. She'll look after you. Okay, Division 1. Last week's results were Ashfield against Canning City. Ashfield ran out 3-2 winners. Western Knights versus Dianella was a 1-1 draw in the Battle of the Balkans. UWA Netherlands and Fremantle City had UWA Netherlands win 3-0. Southwest Phoenix played Joondalup City down in Bunbury there and had a 4-0 win. And Gosnells played Rockingham City and against the odds, Gosnells have come up there with a 2-1 win. This week's round, we have Rockingham playing Canning, Fremantle are at home to Western Knights, Forestfield are at home to UWA Netherlands, Dianella are at home to Southwest Phoenix, and Joondalup will be playing Gosnells. So top of the league are Western Knights, followed by Forestfield, then Dianella and Southwest Phoenix. Ashfield are in 5th, Rockingham in 6th, UWA Netherlands are in 7th, Fremantle 8th, 9th are Gosnells, 10th are Joondalup City, and last is Canning City. Interesting thing though is between 1st and 10th there's only 16 points and 8 games to play, so 24 points up for grabs and anyone's league still. On the line I have with me Jake Shorter. Jake is responsible for the Aussie club listings, which I stumbled across in the media not too long ago, and it was quite interesting because he's ranked all the clubs in the A-League, NPLs and even down to State League 1. So it's good to see where your club ranks. An immense amount of work. Jake Shorter, good morning. How are you?
Morning, Sean. Doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
No, I'm very glad to have you on board. It's just a shame my offsider Peter's not here because he loves stats, and I'm sure he would have gone off on this, but unfortunately he decided to get the flu instead. Now, the Aussie club rankings, what drove you to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it started, not a very exciting story other than, I'm a big football fan. I'm a bit of a numbers guy in my profession as an analyst, and I think I'd seen a similar concept, so to kind of give a little bit of context or a description of what it is for those that are still a little unsure. Essentially, it's the FIFA World Rankings, but for Australian football clubs. And I've seen a similar concept for European football clubs.
Yeah.
And that kind of really interested me. And it was at a similar time as the FFA Cup was still in its early stages a couple of years ago. And, just the question around, well, how big is the gap between A-League and NPL clubs? And even going further than that, how does a club from, say, the top of the New South Wales NPL compared to the top of the WA NPL or the State League One in South Australia or something like that? So it started as just a hobby or a project of interest more than anything, and it's just kind of snowballed a little bit and is growing from there.
Yeah, it must be a massive body of work, though. I mean, how many teams do you actually have on the ranking?
As of right now, I've got, I think it's 195, which includes obviously the A-League and the NPL level in every state. And then in most states, I go down to the next division as well. Only exclusions to that are ACT, Tasmania, and Northern Territory. But every other state, I go down to the NPL 1 or the State League, whatever it's called, that second level.
So what does it actually capture, your analysis of the statistics? You base it purely on results?
Yeah, so it's driven by results, and the scores help to goal difference in each game helps to drive that as well. It's based on without getting into too much detail, I often, when I'm talking to other football mates about this sort of thing, and I have to get called up because I get into too much of the detail because it interests me, but it's based on a formula that essentially looks at a score that we've allocated to a team, looks at the score of Team 1 versus Team 2 and says, well, how big is the difference? And then based on that, it comes up with a probability of which team's going to win, or a percentage. It might say the home team's got a 75% chance and the away team a 25% chance, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
And then based on the actual result, it transfers some of those points from one team to the other. So teams go up and down based on every result. So we've gone back to 2013 and started there, and then we just added every result as they come up and as they're played.
Yeah, it sounds like a fairly simple process.
Yeah, I mean, the original formula was kind of first created for chess, interestingly. So it's
that's ELO, isn't it?
Players. Yeah, the ELO formula, and since then, it wasn't my work that adjusted it, but there's been alterations and things to allow it to be used for football. So things like the home field advantage or the actual goal difference for each game and things like that.
Yeah.
So we've just adapted it to Australia and plugged in all the results.
And how does it work when you've not got a team playing in their season? So, A-League's in its recess at the moment. So what happens from that point?
Well, a club will keep the same score or points for as long as they are not playing. So at the moment, the A-League clubs won't be moving. Once the FFA Cup games start, they'll kind of get some adjustments in there. And what we do at the end of each season, obviously not for the A-League because the same teams are playing each year, but when we have a team drop out of a league, say, a club that gets relegated from Division 1 into a league that we don't actually include at the moment, then that team drops off the list and whoever replaces them comes back in. So there's not a lot of teams that just sit on the same score and don't move. But yeah, during that off-season there won't be a lot of movement.
And who uses this information? Obviously you enjoy getting that and that analytical process happening, but who actually uses it?
Yeah, I guess one thing that we make sure we say when we're talking about this with people is that it's not we're not statisticians. We're as I say, I'm a kind of a numbers guy in my professional career, but nothing that qualifies me to do this. So it's of interest. It's not supposed to be 100% accurate. There's always going to be things that you might pull out and say, well, why is team number 95 higher than team number 96 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's more of interest at the moment, where there's some interesting stories I think that can be pulled out, particularly if to kind of go on a slight tangent. But we're working. This is a project, of my brother and I who's helping me out, and we're working on a project to extend this to as many clubs as possible in Australia. So, as I say, at the moment it's about 195. We're close to being near 1,000 clubs, so going to as many leagues as possible. And obviously that's a lot of results and a lot of work that is happening, which is why it's not quite ready. But from that point, and also going back as far as possible. So the ideal is to go back to at least the start of the NSL and go from there. So in terms of your question, how can it be used? One thing that we see is that we can answer some interesting, or at least give an answer to some interesting questions, whether it's right or not. But questions like, well, how does the Brisbane Roar team of Ange Postecoglou 2011 compare to Sydney of last or earlier this year, compared to South Melbourne of the early 2000s and Hakoah from 1997, 98, 78, those sort of things. Like I say, it's not going to give a yes or no answer, like an accurate thing, but it just helps answer some of those interesting stories.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's indicative of their results over those years and how dominant they were. That would help them within their rankings, but it's not a definitive work where you can say that it definitely happened. I've seen a graph that's come out for the FFA Cup round of 32, and just having a look at how that graph has plotted out, and obviously this is part of the ELO process, but there's 4 corners where you've got they're close on paper, so obviously, 5th versus 10th or something, but low on quality. And then you've got they're not close on paper, so and they're low on quality. Close on paper, high in quality. Close on paper, low in quality. So there's a number of areas in which you would plot on that graph. But from that, you could probably look at what would be the key games for that round. You could probably work out which ones would be the runaway winner, or the probability of being the runaway winner. But it helps you when you're searching the games that should be the games to watch.
That's right. So it's essentially it's not 100%. This is a definitive answer, but it's an interesting way to look at, say, a team. I mean, one of the games that I've picked out of the graph is Moreton Bay from Queensland's NPL versus Broadmeadow Magic from the Northern New South Wales NPL. 2 teams that most people probably haven't heard a lot of, aside from Broadmeadow's made the FFA Cup the last couple of years. So aside from that, you think, well, how do those teams compare? What I've done is I've gone and said, well, on the rankings that we've created here, they're actually very close. And in terms of quality, they're reasonably high on the rankings. They're towards the top. So that indicates it should be an interesting game. Or we hope that it's an interesting game. So it is an interesting way for the FFA Cup in particular, when you've got clubs from different states that are kind of hard to compare. We can look at the numbers and say, well, hopefully those 2 or 3 games where they're close on the rankings should be interesting.
And then you've got the other game there, Blacktown versus Central Coast Mariners, which, they're close on paper. Both of them are very high in quality. That should be a rip snorter of a game then.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, an interesting example was last year in the FFA Cup when Green Gully played Central Coast and they had that upset win. We had Green Gully fairly high on the rankings. Obviously, Central Coast was still a favourite. But we pulled it out and said, that'll be an interesting game to watch. If there's going to be an upset, maybe it'll be that one this year. We're not always right when we're looking at these things, but it's just an interesting way to help understand games or find what might be interesting in there.
Oh no, absolutely. And I look at some other games there. You've got Brisbane Roar versus Melbourne Victory. Obviously, 2 very good sides. And that's the one with 2 A-League sides coming up against each other. Wellington and West Sydney again, very close to each other in rankings, but also in quality. So it does help define those games that are going to be close. Alternatively, you've got Darwin Rovers versus Sydney FC, which should be a bloodbath, but you never know, do you?
Yeah, that's right. It's probably the widest kind of gap when we're talking about these rankings that we've seen between 2 teams. But like I say, you just never know. But it'll be an interesting one to look at. On paper, it says Sydney should absolutely walk over the top of them, but who knows?
Oh, look, on the day, anything is possible. We've seen some wonderful cup sets in the last few years. And I think all of this stuff just adds to that magic of the cup. How much time do you actually spend putting all this together?
Well, I think a lot of the time was in the early stages when we were putting the calculations together, the formula, and kind of testing and amending little things that go into the background, just to see what gave us the best results. And we go back and do some testing to give a very, very basic example. We pull out, like I said before, you can have the 2 teams, the scores of those teams might say team 1 is a 75% chance of winning. Well, what we do is we can go back through all of our results and say, of those games that we predicted the home team to win 75% of the time, how many did they actually win? And if the actual results say that they did win 74% or 76% of the time, then that kind of tells us we're on the right track.
Yep.
So a lot of the time that went into this was in that early stage of testing, and that's still happening. Week to week, and I don't update these rankings every week. I guess the biggest thing is pulling those results out, and at the moment, like we said, we've got it's about 20 leagues around the country when you add up all the NPL and the second division.
Yeah.
So pulling those results out takes a little bit of time. What is going to take the time is, like I was talking about the project that we're working on. Once we add in as many teams as possible, there's nearly, at last count, close to 100 leagues around the country that we're looking to include.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have an answer as to how long it'll take, but I'm a little anxious about how long it might take me. But look, I find it interesting, and if nothing else, doing this gives me a good view of what's happening around the country. Being in Queensland, it's sometimes hard to really get a view of what's happening in some of the other states, so this is a good way to do it.
And I know Penny will kick me if I don't ask the question, but will you be tracking any of the women's leagues?
Yeah, look, we hope to. We found that it's a little bit tougher, partly because, I'll put my hand up and say I don't know a lot about the women's leagues outside of Queensland. I follow the results here a little bit, but in other states, and obviously it's the W League, but beyond that, it's kind of outside my area. But we are hoping to do that once we get the men's up and running. Like I say, a lot of that work in terms of getting the formulas right and the way it all kind of flows and looks. It's just a matter of getting the results. So at that point, we can start looking at that.
And I suppose with these rankings, when we talk about Darwin playing Sydney, if they get beat, but they only get beat by a very small margin, there's a chance that they could actually go up in their ranking?
Yeah, there is. It won't be a big margin. So what kind of happens is, even if, looking at the Sydney and Darwin difference in points at the moment on our rankings, it's so big that the percentage chance that the formula gives Sydney of winning is about 99.8% or something ridiculously high.
Yeah.
So obviously, if Sydney goes and wins the game, they've achieved something, that very minuscule amount better than 99.8 because they've actually won it, which is 100%. That's the way the formula looks at it. So it says, well, Sydney's won, therefore it should take some points off Darwin. But because that margin is so small, it'll round to zero almost. It'll be almost no movement. If it was a draw, for instance, Darwin would actually have a big jump on the ladder because of that, because they're expected to lose by they're given such a small chance. The bigger the goal difference, so a 1-0 win versus a 10-0 win, there's a much bigger transfer of points from one team to the other.
So if I was if I wasn't registered as a player or a official with a club anywhere within the country, and I like to have a little bit of a punt, would this be a useful tool for me with the probability of winning?
I don't know about that. I mean, I guess we do, like I say, test for accuracy, and we're seeing some reasonable results.
I'm saying without any guarantees, would be better than just a blind guess.
That's right. I mean, I've seen it used for that in, like I say, looking at the European examples that are out there for the club rankings over there. Some of them do look at that sort of thing. It's not something that I've actually gone and tested. I guess, it goes into another level of, what's on offer in terms of odds in the market and all those sort of things that we don't actually look at. But I guess, if nothing else, it might give you some sort of information as to the relative strength between two teams that you might not otherwise have a clue about. So, look, it's a potential avenue, I guess, for some people, but I can't say I've gone down that path.
No, but as a predictor, I mean, nothing would give you a better feeling than when you've rated these teams and ranked them, that the teams that you've given a probability of winning, if they win, you can at least sit back and go, I knew that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I won't say anything about the ones that I get wrong, but the ones we get right definitely will.
We only ever claim victories, mate.
That's right.
So apart from that warm, fuzzy feeling you get when you are right, what other rewards are there in this for you? It's just purely for pleasure.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think like I say, started as a bit of a passion or something of interest. So my brother and I have decided to kind of put it up on a website so people can look at it. At the moment, it's something that I do on an Excel spreadsheet at home, and I paste up the actual results on a couple of websites, but on other websites. But we're going to create a website for it and add as many clubs as we can.
Mm-hmm.
And then honestly, we'll keep it updated, but we'll go and look for those interesting stories and those we can look back at the biggest upsets and as another example of something that might be of interest. You know, you look at Green Gully beating Central Coast last year, and then also Redlands from Queensland beating Adelaide United, and the question that comes up in football conversations and in the media is, you know, is this the biggest ever upset? Well, it's hard to know, but we like to think that we can go and have a look and actually answer that question to some degree.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from on that. That's interesting.
Yeah, so things like, you know, there was the NSL Cup back in the 70s and 80s, so we can go and look at those things and say, well, here's a couple of upsets, be your own judge, but here's what the numbers say, and yeah, we don't get anything else out of it other than it's of interest to us, and hopefully once we get the site up and running, there'll be some interesting stories, and I guess what we kind of would like to see eventually is other people going to the site, pulling out numbers of their own and using it for their own kind of stories and things of interest.
Absolutely.
We can't be looking at everything, and people will have different clubs that they support and want to go and look into, and yeah, we're going to hopefully encourage people to do that.
So where do we find the Aussie Club rankings currently?
So right now, the best place is on the 442 forums, and there's actually a thread on there called Australian Club Rankings, which is where we paste it up every now and then. I try and do it reasonably regularly, but
you did an update last night.
We did a quick update last night, and we generally try and do it every couple of weeks or every month during the winter season, which is when most of the games are played. But sometimes it's more frequently if I see something of particular interest.
And in the future, you'll come up with your own website or app, maybe?
Yeah, I'd love to look down the app path, maybe, but at the moment, we have a site. It's www.thepeckingorder.com.au, and at the moment, it's more of a placeholder. We've got a little blog on there with a couple of articles, but it's where the rankings will be when we get to that, and we're hoping at this stage by the end of August we'll have everything kind of tested and back tested, and we'll have some numbers up there of interest. So people can wait and maybe check that out when we get to that point, or there's a place there to put in an email address, and we can let you know when it's up and running as well. So
not a problem.
Yeah.
All right, Jake, look, thank you very much for your time. It's very interesting, and for me it just shows that the game can be enjoyed in all number of ways, and not necessarily standing there on a terrace and throwing smoke bombs. So, you know, more power to you. I really appreciate the work you and your brother are putting in. I'm very happy to see that my club sits at 115th in your rankings. We think that's respectable. And look, I encourage everyone to have a look. And obviously, the more that tool is used, the better it will become. So very much a thank you for what you're doing for the game.
Not a problem. Thanks very much, Sean. I appreciate it. And anybody that gets some sort of interest out of it, you know, it's worth our time.
No worries, Jake. Thank you very much. And I will be calling you in the future.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, Jake Shorter from Queensland, who is the man behind the Aussie Club rankings. And as I said to Jake there, it just shows that the game can be enjoyed in a number of ways. You know, whether you're sitting at home watching Australia play with a beer in your hand, or you're out there on the terraces or coaching or playing, there's just so many ways we can all enjoy this game. Amazing what motivates him, you know, that he gets off on the numbers, and I think that's really interesting that he can do that and find it interesting, because honestly it drives me mad. But good on him. Just another avenue for us to enjoy the game. And for those of you that do like a punch, just remember you can't do it if you're a registered player or official within a club within Australia. But if you're not, fill your boots. There's another avenue for you to find out what's going on in the game and make some decisions on who you're going to back. All right, I'll be on the air shortly with Paul Oliver from Canning. We'll talk to him. But before I do, I'll just do the Premier League results for the amateur division. And last week, BB United played Kingsley and lost 6-0. Wembley Downs were at home to Subiaco AFC, and Wembley Downs won 5-1. Perth Royals played Ellenbrook and won 2-0. Leeming Strikers played Southern Spirit in a local derby there, and they won 3-2. Kwinana United played Hammersley Rovers, and Kwinana won 1-0. North Perth played Belmont Villa, and they beat Belmont 4-0. This week, Wembley Downs will be playing Kingsley. BB are at home to Belmont. Perth Royals at home to Leeming Strikers. Ellenbrook United are playing Kwinana United. Hammersley Rovers are playing Subiaco AFC. And North Perth United are playing Southern Spirit. And all those games will be held on Sunday. So that's that. I've lost the league table for them, so I won't be reading that one out. I'll be back with Paul Oliver after these.
The team behind footballwa.net can boast the best independent local football website and football forums in WA. These are sites devoted entirely to promoting the local game and our history. Visit footballwa.net for the World Football Program guest lineup every Friday. Radio Fremantle, recognising volunteers who support football in the local community.
Perth Glory early bird memberships are now on sale for the 2017-18 Hyundai A-League season. If you're an existing Reserve C Perth Glory member, now is your best time to renew and enjoy discounted pricing and extra special member benefits. Early bird ends July 20th, so be there for the glory, as together we look to create destiny. Membership.perthglory.com.au.
Oswest Fencing and Wrought Iron. Our family fabricates fence panels, gates and framework. Repairs gates and sets up automated systems. Ring us on 9258 6822 for old-fashioned family service and advice. Station sponsor.
The World Football Program welcomes the Australian Mini Football Federation onto Radio Fremantle. Join the growing numbers playing non-traditional forms of football at any of the Area 5 centres around Perth. Find out more on osminifootball.com. Station sponsor.
And just going through those adverts, there's mention there of the Perth Glory Early Bird Special. I got a text myself during the week saying there's only a few days left, so if you are thinking of taking advantage of that, get onto them now. Okay, the women's MPL, we've only got one game on today. That's Balcatta versus Bassendean Callies. So there's not much going on in the women's world today. Northern Redbacks are top of the league with 22 points. East Fremantle are in second spot with 21 points. In third is Queen's Park on 18, so it's very tight at the top there. At the bottom end, we've got Balcatta, who are on 7 points. Beckenham Angels, surprisingly enough, who are on 6. And Bassendean Callies, who have not got a point yet. But quite a small league, that one. Now, on the air, I have someone who is synonymous with the club Canning City, in Paul Oliver. Paul, good morning. How are you?
Yeah, very well, mate. How are you?
Good. Seems like you've been at Canning forever. Is that true?
It does feel a bit like that. Yeah, when I first came over from England in 2000, Canning was the first club I signed for, and I've pretty much been with them ever since.
So you didn't? Oh, so you were with them when they played in the Premier League, and? Yeah,
I was in the inaugural year. The 2001 was when we re-entered the competition. I was in the first team squad as a 15-year-old back then.
Seems like forever ago, doesn't it?
It does. A world away.
So you've been a player at the club, you've coached the club, and now you're the club president? Yeah,
it's a gradual stepping stone to this point, but I've pretty much been a junior, a senior. I've captained the club at state level, and obviously been coach of the first team, and now president of the state league side as well. So every role brings its own challenges, but with challenges comes rewards as well.
Absolutely. And look, I've been to your ground at the start of the season and just seen what's happening behind the scenes, and it's great to see some of the old hands like Hans Mayer still very much involved in the background. But, you know, Hans has been a wonderful influence on your club, and it's just nice to see that he hasn't just walked away from you.
No, I think he'd never be able to separate himself completely from it, even though he's not doing as much of a hands-on role as he was. But we've, like most local community clubs. We've got to hold tight the people that have been there over the years, because volunteers and supporters are often hard to come by.
Absolutely, but under your tenure, there seems to be some changes happening. I was very happy to see that you had the club rooms open. There was a great vibe around the club, and you've got a lot of, to me, just looking at what's going on, a lot of younger people getting back in. And although he's old in player terms, people like Rory Moutet.
Yeah, well, as I said before, the volunteers are often hard to come by, but we've got a small to medium group of people that are dedicated to improving this club on and off the field. We've tried hard to make sure that we utilise our facility as best we can, because it is a good club room, and we're using the full kitchen facilities and the bar area now. So it is something that not only do we want to do for the visiting clubs, but also to make sure the players feel part of something that's growing.
Yeah, because it's always been a good venue to go. You get there on that limestone wall there, and I always thought that the barbecue and the table with a few beers and an esky was just detracted from it. Now you've opened up those club rooms, and they're massive, but having the food served from a proper kitchen and the beers from a bar just adds to that spectator experience.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think the whole barbecue area that we've used for many years was more so because the volunteers that do it obviously want to still be part of the game and watch the game, but obviously we've had to sacrifice that, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't seen much football this year. I've flipped more burgers than I've seen goals scored this year, but you've got to make those sacrifices.
I've been there, done that. Both myself and Bill Busby have had reverted to our slave names at certain stages through certain seasons, so I know exactly the journey you're taking, Paul.
Yeah, no, but as I said, there's a couple of people, Lindsay Longstaff-Bills and her husband John, obviously with a Longstaff name, so highly regarded at our club. They've come on board and are putting great efforts in as well.
Yeah, no, the Longstaff name reverberates through WA State Soccer, but I know, like yourselves and Gosnells, he's had a great association with both and is sorely missed.
Absolutely.
Now, I also know that you're very proactive and have been for a number of years in social media. I see you've really been super active this year in promoting your club, family days and other things that you've been promoting on the game days.
Yeah.
That's had a good effect for you?
Yeah, well, it's an avenue that we've never fully explored, but something that can reach so many people. Obviously, it's a free piece of equipment that you can actually utilise to promote the club. Rory does a lot of our media stuff. He's our business development manager, so he's come on board and obviously improved our website, and we've got a blog and all sorts of things happening on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all these avenues that we're just obviously trying to get the Canning badge, the Canning name, and grow the club both off the field and hopefully on it as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And look, you can only do that when you've got people involved who just love the club. And, as I said before with Hans Mayer and yourself, that you've certainly got that ingredient. Now,
yeah, well, the Facebook thing actually, over the last couple of months, there's a page come up called the Canning City FC English Fan Club, which was started by a couple of blokes, Scott Clark and Matt Wheeler, who have no connection to the club whatsoever. But we've now got likes from people in Egypt, in Indonesia, and Italy, and so it's hopefully the start of something big.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I think sometimes some of their tactics haven't particularly helped you in the last few weeks. I know there's been some banter going on in the background.
I think it's all innocent banter, and everyone I think appreciates that.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I don't think anyone gets upset by it, but given your position, some things don't help you. Given your league position, obviously not where you want to be. Again, just from what I've observed of your team playing, and both at the start of the season and now that Peter Lord's taken over, you're a good side. I think the standard in Division 1 has risen so much in the last 3-4 years with the threat of relegation. And I look at the side that you put out there, and if it wasn't for bad luck, you wouldn't have any.
Yeah, well, it's difficult because we've been in so many games this year. I mean, especially the first probably half dozen games, we were leading at Ashfield, as you well know, when they visited Canning 2-0 at half time, and then conceding 3 penalties in a half of football is not often what you see, but you got to cop that. As I said, we've been in so many games. We've got the squad. We know we've got the squad capable of competing with the best teams in this league. We've got our 18s are playing Rockingham as we speak, and obviously we've got a good crop of players that are coming through. Obviously, we just need to evaluate where we're at the end of the season, and well, obviously we want to be in this league, but it's obviously not the end of the world if we're not. We'll come back bigger and stronger if that does happen.
Oh, look, I think you've already sown the seeds for that this season, no matter where you are. Your youth sides have always been strong. Going back to 2001 when a spotty-faced Paul Oliver played for them, and up to present, you've always been in the top 3 or 4. Won the league a couple of times. What happens after that? Because your reserve side seems to be a little bit older, and then how many of those actually are progressing through to your first team, or is that something that you're looking to really push into the future?
Yeah, our 18s have always been strong, and obviously we've got about 500 juniors at the club, which Jeff Rowlands looks after, and obviously it's very much a community club that we encourage to follow on through to Saturdays. But the 18s that we've got at the moment, I've got no doubt there's already been a couple, more than a couple that have pushed and been named in the first team squad, and obviously it's something that needs to be managed to make sure that they don't get their head turned by clubs in the NPL.
Absolutely, and club loyalty is a massive thing, but we've had a similar situation where 18s have gone on to play NPL, and we're very much aware that we're not going to stifle a kid's progression, but at the same time you get some of them come back, or the lads that aren't good enough stay with you, and that's really what needs to happen. And some of those are late bloomers.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Listen, I'm the first to admit that if we identify that someone's a talented player, we'll try and find the best pathway then as an individual. Obviously, we want to look after them and make sure that if they can make a career out of football, then we'll try and make that happen for them.
Absolutely.
So certainly it's something that we talk about regularly.
Now, Peter Lord was a great pickup for you as a coach. You can already see his influences within the team, and he's taken on what is a fairly difficult job. I think you're probably about 16 points away from safety at the moment, and if you play to your potential, you could get those. But Pete's a good pickup for the future. You're not intending to ditch him at the end of the year and bring in someone else, or he's your coach for the next 2 or 3 years, hopefully?
Yeah, Pete. I've known Pete for years. We played with each other many years ago, but always kept in touch. He's won everything as a player can win in WA with Perth, and he's not here for something to do on a Saturday. He's made it quite plain and clear that he sees himself here long term to help the players develop and help the club go as far as they can go.
Yeah, I've seen Pete develop from a young 10 or 11-year-old in the district program and followed him through Perth and onwards. So, it's just nice to see that he hasn't walked away from the game as so many do, and he's put him back in because he's had some really good coaches over the years.
Oh, absolutely, and he's played alongside some of the players that have made the step up to the A-League as well. So it's Peter, as I say, a fantastic acquisition, a great football man, and a great family man off the park as well, and all the lads really appreciate all the effort that he does.
Yeah, so overall, I mean, you sound really positive about the club, and, I think you've got your perspective right. What you have is what you have. Hopefully, if you get relegated, let's not say when, let's go if you get relegated, because I think it is an if, you would hope to keep your current playing side together, or as much of them as you could, and certainly progress your youth into the 18s and your resis upwards. From what I've seen on both sides, you've got the embryo of a good club right the way across all three sides.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the squad that we've got now through all three teams is one that's capable of doing well in this division. We've had the same first team squad for most of the last 3 years. The bulk of the squad's the same, and they're a close bunch of lads off the park as well. So I don't see anyone going anywhere. But as I said, it's a big if. We're still supremely confident that we can play in this division next year.
Look, I see nothing that should knock you from that confidence. As far as your club goes, your club rooms, I noticed, are shared by a football club and cricket as well.
Yeah, that's it is. It's a bit of a juggling act at times, and obviously with these the possibility of a playoff against the Division 2 teams and potentially going into 4 games after the season, ground availability could be an issue. It's something we've spoken about, and we are trying to identify grounds that we can potentially develop and make our own down the track.
Yeah. But I suppose the other thing is that if you get into that playoff situation, have you got a B plan for that? Because you might struggle.
No, well, we as you may or may not be aware, where we train isn't where we play. So our training facility could certainly be utilised for that. We're playing actually at our training ground on Wednesday night, as we play Gosnells in our game that got postponed a few weeks back.
Oh, okay. No, that's a good thing. I didn't know that was happening. So yeah, obviously for future, that's a good project because there are some limitations when you're ground sharing, particularly when you go to NPL and you've got ground restrictions. I know it's very difficult for clubs at the start and the end of the season if they're sharing with cricket. Yeah,
it's certainly an area that we're looking at closely. We've already had discussions with council about potential areas that we could either develop existing facilities or potentially build from the ground up. But it's a slow burner. These things normally are. But obviously it is something that we're conscious of and want to improve as well.
But you, with your council, and obviously you are engaging with your council. You've got 500 juniors. That should be enough footage to develop a better ground or a ground that's for your own use rather than having to share with 2 other very powerful sports.
Certainly, and there's been enough precedent set by other councils, Mandurah and Rockingham over the past decade. Forestfield, obviously, their new fantastic facility they've got. So there's enough areas to suggest that if other clubs can do it, why can't we?
Absolutely. Okay, Paul, I'm running out of time. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. I truly hope that you can turn around some of that luck and, like all these things, the football gods dish out luck equally. It's about time you got some back. And having played you twice, I hope you win all your games.
Yeah, thank you for that, mate. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. Thank you very much, Paul.
No drama.
Paul Oliver, one of the younger presidents within the club and doing a fantastic job down there at Canning, really lifting the public profile and really dynamic, but hasn't lost touch with some of the old guard. And I know, because I saw Hans down there the other day, still heavily involved, and really is a nice family feel to Canning when you're down there. So when they're at home, pay them a visit because they're worth a look. And I don't think they're a bad side. In fact, I don't think there are any bad sides in Division 1. The football has improved exponentially each year, and I think that's the old promotion relegation thing, because there's nothing inspires the team more than the threat of being relegated from the league. All right, we're closing in on the end of the show. For Pete Skeeler, get well, mate, and we'll be back with you next time. Penny will be back on air next week with John O'Connell. Lots going on in the football world. We've got next week the FFA Cup final between Sorrento and my favourites, the Western Knights, and hopefully the Knights can do that. I'd like to see them succeed. Followed with the FFA Cup games on the 26th of July, I think that is, for Sorrento. So keep an eye on the media for those. Glory playing away at Heidelberg, Sorrento playing at home, and we've got Western Knights going across to Gold Coast United. So it'd be good to see all of those teams progress to the next round, but if not, just glad to see that they're in there and battling well. Closing in on the end of the show. Thank you for being with me and putting up with me stumbling around things today. It's not been easy when you're here on your own. I'm just looking now for my exit tune, but I can't find it for the moment. So we'll be back next week, and best of luck to everybody. I'll just put on something quickly. No, I won't. I hate this stumbling. So best of luck to all the teams out there today. If you're out there in the NPL and you're looking for a game to play, some cracking games out there in today. Sorrento are playing ECU Joondalup in the Derby of the North. So if you're up that way, I think that's going to be a cracker. Both teams playing out of Joondalup area, and both teams will be hoping to do the job on each other. So you get yourself out there. And Inglewood, who are scoring lots of goals, are playing Stirling Lions. Johnny Perkins, I think you're in for a workout today, son. All the best. I'll be back in a few weeks. Thank you very much. This has been the World Football Programme.
Join us again next week at the same time for the World Football Programme on Radio Fremantle 107.9 FM.
Welcome to the Jazz Scene 1955. The first band is a band from the north. It's the Merseysippy Jazz Band.